branches of government. They're supposed to be separate branches of government, and there's supposed to be a check and a balance. So let's say the legislature legislates a particular statute, and our governor, or in the case of our federal, the president says, no, you know, that's not a good law, that's not right. And then he or she sends it back, and the legislature has to make it really, really important and pass it within more than just a majority of 51%. They've got to come back with their 2/3 or whatever it's required for this particular law to pass, to override the veto. And then, as a last check and balance, is when that application of law is tried to be applied to the people, then we have our judicial branch. And what folks really don't understand is that the judges do not have the authority to decide whether our legislative law is valid or if it's unconstitutional. The only people that have that authority are a jury, because our legislature, our governor, and our judicial branch are all part of an artificial entity. They're part of a government that we created. So if they do something that we don't like, it is us, the citizens, we're the ones that are, the responsibility and right is to correct that problem. And so let's say that there is some type of statute that's been legislated and it's unconstitutional. It goes against us. It goes against our agreement. So how in the world can a judicial branch decide what's unconstitutional? Only we can. And
it's
so
our contract.
It's our contract. It's our Constitution. And the judicial branch and the legislative branch and the governor, the executive branch, they have nothing to do with deciding our contract.
Here, part of that larger problem, Nancy, is with the judiciary using case law, bad case law, in many instances.
Well, it's their opinions.
And court rules. The courts now have usurped the legislative
the power we gave to the legislature to create our law.
Write law.
Right.
And so now, to get back the whole system into balance, when you say there's 3 branches of government, I like to think there's 4. And that 4th is called the grand jury. The grand jury
is separate.
Absolutely.
Actually separate from any of the branches of government. And it belongs to us, because it is us.
And government has taken our grand jury away from us. The founding fathers put in place the grand jury so the people could go right to their grand jury, and when the bureaucracy, when the judges, when the bureaucrats, when the elected officials did things that were treasonous, we had a recourse.
It was a buffer. Just like when we talked about here, about, let's say there was a bad law that was legislated. It was something like, you are going to be hung if you spit on the sidewalk. And this gets passed. And this is outrageous, and then they try to enforce it. Well, guess what? In this state, every single crime is supposed to go to the grand jury. Doesn't, but it's supposed to go. So now let's just say the state, the people, are trying to enforce this. I spit on the sidewalk and now I'm going to be hung. The grand jury has to hear it. The grand jury has to decide our law and whether to indict me. But that doesn't happen anymore because our judges snatched up our grand jury, and they want the prosecutors and the judges to decide these things and not the people.
And the
how do you go about getting a grand jury?
Well, in the past here in this state,
the way you got it.
In the past,
the way the citizens would get the grand jury,
to the grand jury.
In the past.
It was actually the grand jury members were published every week in our papers.
Who appointed the grand jury?
The grand jury is selected from a random pool, just like a jury is selected.
I agree with that. Who actually controlled that selection? Who was the entity that sent out the notice that you're going to be on the grand jury?
That was done at the court administrator's office. as it is for every jury. And the statutes say the manner in which that happens. And then the statutes say you have to do it over here. But the legislature has said how it happens, and it's been given to the judicial branch to make it happen. But in this state, we have this really bad problem.
In this state, our state, Minnesota State Constitution, specifically spells out that the legislature has the duty to oversee the judiciary.
And discipline them.
Yes, and what the legislature, in all of their laziness has done, or ineptness, whichever you choose, has abdicated their responsibility, which they cannot do under the Constitution, but they have done it anyway, turn that responsibility over to the courts. So the courts become self-regulated. The judges, the attorneys, and in Minnesota they created this thing called the Judicial Board of Review. But what we have seen in looking at the Judicial Board of Standards is that when you file a complaint, when citizens file a complaint, it's referred to as going into the black hole. Everything goes in, nothing comes out.
And according to the rules of this board, everything is secret. There is no ability of the public or even members of the legislature or the Supreme Court to even see what this board is doing, to even review what the files were. There was a special advisory committee that was put together by the Supreme Court specifically to look at what this board is doing, and they asked to look at the files. Show us what you're doing. Good and done. It's all secret.
In a simple way, how would a citizen get a grand jury to investigate a police officer, a judge, elected official, where you want somebody prosecuted for or investigated for what they're doing wrong?
Okay, Nancy, the question
is in a simple way.
The question you need to answer here: how would the average citizen, the sovereign citizen, if they wanted to have a police officer, a judge, elected official investigated, more than investigated, bring forward evidence that there was a crime committed, and to the grand jury and tell the grand jury, we want you to give a bill of, what would you refer to it, a bill of indictment?
Yep, we want a bill of indictment.
And
a bill of indictment to who? Where'd you bring it?
And that bill of indictment would go to who?
Okay. If we had access to the grand jury as we are supposed to,
as spelled out in the Constitution,
and in a Supreme Court case from 100 years ago in Minnesota, we're supposed to go directly to the grand jury with our evidence. If that happened, I just walk in, I call, and I say, when's the grand jury? Give me the grand jury foreperson's number. I walk in and I say, here's my evidence.
And that evidence is not supposed to be presented to the judge,
nope.
A judge,
or the prosecutor,
or a
anyone
prosecutor,
else.
So they can say, well, this is against another
judge
unit
or
of bureaucracy.
Who do you submit it to?
This to the grand jury itself.
Take it
directly to the grand
jury. Now, when we talk grand juries, there are different levels of grand juries. There's a grand jury at the county level.
In this state, every county is required to have a grand jury.
And then there's a state grand jury.
Only for special instances. There's the Attorney General of Minnesota can call a special grand jury, and that has happened before in the past year.
I want to put the paperwork in the proper form. So where do I find it, and how do I write it out? Can I write it out in pencil?
You can write out anything you've got.
Nancy,
If you're,
Nancy,
yes.
How does a citizen put this paperwork together? What do they have to do to present something to a grand jury?
You're not required to do anything in any form whatsoever. You say, I have evidence, I have a videotape, I have these documents that were forged, and I can show it's forged. You put together a package, or you give them a videotape, and you have a videotape of some official that's killing another official. and the sheriff wouldn't do anything about it. You go to the grand jury. This is so important for us to have access to our grand jury.
Could people as a group go in and testify? Let's say there was 3 or 4
Obviously,
people
yes.
that firsthand eyewitnessed
Yes.
a
Say,
crime.
I witnessed this. Now, the other part of the grand jury is that the grand jury investigation is supposed to be secret. Not the grand jury itself, but the grand jury investigation. And so the person could come in there and know that they can give this information to other citizens, they can investigate this, and they're not going to go home and have their house firebombed by the politician that they just gave the information about.
Maybe there should be legislation where there's a grand jury room at town hall.
There is a grand jury room in every one of our courthouses in each of our counties. But we cannot get to the grand jury because of these simple things that in our state have been done. First of all, we had a statute that was enacted that says court rules supersede, which mean eliminate statutes. The second one...
The courts put themselves over the people's legislature
Yes.
by saying that the laws that the legislature has written can be superseded by court rules. Now the court has elevated themselves above everything else. That's what we call
Tyranny.
That
So
tyranny.
without
that
an army, they
slow effect of that silent thing called gravity, like a thief in the night. The courts have slowly taken more and more power onto themselves, and when our state legislature gave over to the courts the legislature's duty of oversight of the courts and of the judges, there's nothing to further control the judges unless we the people rise.
Yeah. And we used to, in Minnesota, the legislature used to even write the court rules. Now, the judges write the court rules, and the court rules supersede the legislative statutes. And our Supreme Court actually has the audacity to post on their website 5 pages, single-spaced, of all of the Minnesota statutes that no longer have any force of law because they have eliminated them with their court rules.
It sounds like the easiest way to get our government back is to gain access back to the grand jury system.
And that's what we've been doing.
Nancy,
This-
what, Nancy? What is the easiest way for us to get our government back?
Is for us to learn who we are and for us to join together and for us to stand together and actually act like the sovereigns. It's not just getting access to a grand jury, which will be part of the process. But first we have to know who we are and what power we have.
Let's talk a little bit about what the groups that we are working with have done to that end. Starting with
Judge our courts?
judge our courts, but going to the legislative bill that we introduced,
Yes.
House File number 1261
Yep.
and 2079
79 in the Senate.
And those bills were to have the legislature take back their duty to oversee the courts.
Right. Well,
correct?
the 1261 and 2079 is what we talked about with this Board on Judicial Standards. Instead of it being run by the courts, it would be run by the citizens. The citizens, just like it...
With a couple members
Yes,
from the legislature.
a couple members from the legislature. And the other part of the bill was repealing that insane statute that says court rules supersede our statutes, and repealing another statute that says court opinions supersede, eliminate our statutes. And folks, by the way, there is a rule. It's in the Minnesota Rules of General Practice. It's the second rule. It says the judges do not have to obey the rules. So,
Their own rules.
yes, the old rules that have been written, the judges don't even have to obey the rules. So they don't have to obey the rules, and the rules supersede the statutes, and the opinions supersede the statutes. Folks, here in the state of Minnesota, we have no law. We have tyranny. We have a judicial branch that is completely out of control. So, yes, it'd be great to get back to our grand jury and indict all these people, but how are we going to indict them in courts that are totally out of control?
You're paying taxes without representation. And if I were to want to start a grassroots movement right now, a minute from now, and I wanted to do something, and not just one state, I wanted to make Americans live in America again with freedom, and then have the government for them. What do I do right now to get something started? Do we talk to legislators? Something simple like we want access to a grand jury where we want our government back. In simple terms, what can we do?
Nancy, let's talk about how the citizens get their government back right now. And I say that in terms of the problem that's out there. I mean, we took out a full-page ad.
Full-page ad.
Full-page ad,
St. Paul.
Memorial Day weekend, laying out that we wanted what we did, and we went to the governor, we went to the Attorney General's
And
office.
the headline was, "We want our grand jury
Jury back." And the bureaucracy kills it. Our bills that were down at the state legislature couldn't get out of committee.
couldn't get into committee. They wouldn't even let us have a hearing in committee.
And part of the problem is the legislature is so filled with attorneys. And the problem with having the attorneys in the legislature is that they've taken an oath to the courts.
They're officers of the court.
They're officers of the courts. And my understanding is you're not allowed to hold two offices simultaneously.
You cannot be in the legislative branch in holding an office and in the judicial branch. And that is pursuant to our Constitution in Minnesota. And they're doing it. And our governor is an attorney.
So the people that are in charge of the committee chairpersons, have the power to decide what bills get heard and what bills don't get heard.
Okay,
so now the committee chairpersons are attorneys.
So let's talk about a solution. There's an election this fall. They're out. Get them all out. First and foremost, get them all out.
Here's another thing we want to talk about with the election of judges. In Minnesota, there is a movement underfoot to make all judges appointed. All judges, for the most part, are appointed now anyway. If you watch when judges retire, they retire in a manner before the end of their term, in which case the governor, who is also a lawyer, appoints the attorney to fill the judge's position. So now you have
no election.
No election. You have it.
A lot of this, I'm sorry to interrupt. A lot of this is our own fault. We're electing lawyers.
Right.
We're electing lawyers.
And
lawyers
they
should
write,
not be put in the
and they're corrupting the
legislature.
system.
And
They write the laws so only they can understand.
And we have another wonderful solution. Here in Minnesota,
Put them all in jail?
no, here in Minnesota, this is just wonderful, folks, and everybody got to get on this. In Minnesota, our Constitution says that judges will be learned in the law. Our statute says, in order for you to run to be a judge, you need to be learned in the law.
Not that you need to be an attorney. You need to be learned in the law.
Now, court rules, though, the court rules say you have to be an attorney.
So the court, another part of our law that the court seized was making a rule, and remember, the courts have deemed that their rules supersede legislation, and in this case, their court rules supersede our state constitution.
That's
our
right.
state constitution says,
Learned in the law.
Not an attorney that has taken an oath to uphold the courts.
Now,
That is despicable. That is the problem we're facing
and
here.
this fall we have quite a few, I think it's over 100 judicial seats that are coming open, first time in a long time. And unless they play this little trick where the judges are going to retire and they get the governor to appoint so we don't have these elections, We are going to have an opportunity as citizens, not as citizen attorneys, but as citizens. We're going to be running for different judicial branches, and we are going to be giving a seminar. The seminar is called the Learned in the Law Seminar. And when you have completed the seminar and filled out the book and passed the test, you'll get a certificate that says you're learned in the law.
Is that your own personal thing, or
This is our group. We've got a whole, actually, several groups coming together on this, and we're going to be pushing in with massive amounts of people that are going to be seeking election in the judicial branch as judges, as citizens, not as attorneys. And guess what, folks? One of the great things about that judicial rule about the grand jury, if you're a judge, doesn't matter who you are, you can call a grand jury.
As it is now, I thought I lived in a representative government where I had access to the government. Going through courts, it seems more like a monarchy where the judge is a king.
Yes.
And the lawyers are the lords, and if a lord goes against the king, he loses his property, his
Yes.
ability to make money.
Yes,
So
actually it's a very contained system, because only in our system right now, the way the judges have it put together, only attorneys can be judges. And so if you're an attorney, then you can be a judge. And the judges are trying to make it so that this thing called power of attorney, where like in the case with my mom gave me power of attorney, and there's a property issue. So I'm in court arguing with this power of attorney. And the judge just lit off saying, I can't do this. You're not an attorney at bar. You haven't taken the bar exam. You haven't sworn the oath to uphold me.
The court, the king.
Yes, to kiss my you-know-what.
we've been given 2 minutes to wrap it up.
And so the situation is, folks, first we have to understand who we are. We are the sovereigns. And then we have to understand that we have to get ourselves in compliance with what is natural law. And you understand our common law. And there's many places where you can look up common law and natural law and then operate in that manner in your own personal life. And as you operate and step out in that manner, you actually operate in your power as a sovereign citizen.
And one of the things we need to do right now is protect the remaining rights we have and not let people like our former governors, Alan Quie, Arnie Carlson.
Oh, our current governor.
We now have a nation. We have a nation of angry people. We make it simple. They're going to join us in lots of numbers. They're going to be contacting you, contacting me, and we're going to do something.
So first of all,
that's true, Nancy. We have to get people to rise, be angry, and fight for their rights.
And get your video cameras out and let's go, because that's where you're going to find me all over the web, because I go in with the video camera or the microphone, and I want to get the answers from those people that we have put into office to serve us. I want to know why they're not doing it.
And remember why the judges will not allow cameras in the courtroom. It's because you would have a record,
Evidence
of how they violate our laws, how they alter transcripts, how they make bad rulings, and of course they want to do that in total secrecy.
You out there listening now that are watching this video, get up off your ass and get out there and do something. Grand jury is the way to go. Let's go. Let's do it. Come on.
And
Now.
June 4th, we're having a seminar, day-long seminar at Meadowbrook, at Bethlehem Baptist Church. It is in Mounds View, Minnesota, June 14th, all day long. We will be recording it.
Flag Day.
We will be posting it, and we will get it.
How about if they go to our website, Judge
I'll post that under the video, the link.
Ourkids.org is hosting it, yes.
JudgeOurCourts.com.
I don't think it's on that, but Our Kids has it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Say your names both again.
Nancy Lazaryan.
You want to spell that?
No.
How about phonetically?
Come on, let's do it again.
And,
Nancy Lazaryan.
Bob's sick, and we've done a...
How do you spell your last name?
Zick. And for the last 16 years, we've done a live weekly show, call-in show called Inside Insight, and we cover our government.
All right.
Thank you.
That was excellent. Get off. Okay, wait a second.
I let my son.